want to talk about video game greed. Video games are a business, and what I mean by that is companies who make them have to reach a profit. The player experience is often second, but we, the consumers, will only pay for things that have good player experiences, or they ingrain ourselves so deep in our culture that we cannot pull out. Hello everybody, my name is Just Josh. You are watching a channel without AI, without advertisements, and I'm not that great of an editor, so let's get into it. Today we are looking at the many branches of video game greed. Rest assured, we are not going to cover all of them, but there are far too many, and I want to talk about a couple of them today. So we're going to start with some of the things that feel more ingrained in our culture, and then move up to the things you probably want to hear about, like for instance the Fallout, and the GTA scandal, and even the CS. But I feel like not only am I trying to get a little bit of reviewer attention, no bullshit, but I also want to ingrain the fundamental basis of the world we live in. Because in my opinion, we can't get to Y without having X first. You need to build on ourselves. So when I first look at things that got a little bit strange, I look at the time of battle passes. And I am unsure who actually had the idea, but Dota 2 in 2013 to 2018 was the first game to actually introduce the Battle Pass formula that we know and love today. Also around 2018, Valve added the Campaign Pass to TF2, which is essentially a Battle Pass. So then we fast forward until Fortnite, because it wasn't until Fortnite did it really infect every single game that you play. Even single player ones often come with Battle Passes. Company realized that if you have built-in rewards to keep the player playing, it's beneficial. Because the more time they spend in your game, and the more that brain has an idea to grind, the more likelihood they are going to spend money in your game. That quote-unquote guaranteed time playing your game for these rewards is so much more important than anything else, because you know we will have the player locked in for X amount of time because they want these rewards. The reward systems themselves are worth touching on. It does it in a perfect sense to make the highest tier of the reward the most appetizing. At the same time, it also creates the sole reason to grind for these things, and it is not always the bonus. For instance, a lot of this comes from the fear of missing out, and I know that because I suffer that myself. The fear of missing out is real, and it can drive players to sometimes play something they don't want to play because they are on that grind. And in that way, mixed with some of the horrendous length of these battle passes, it becomes a full-time job. You are also playing these games for a long-ass time to get the rewards that are only for credit, so essentially, you can show off what you have. Not a lot of these things can transfer to real world money, and the ones that can are often jeopardized because one entity controls the market, or you're putting your money in video game bonds, and it's not a smart idea. So with battle passes, you're grinding a lot, you're playing a full-time job just to keep up with everybody else, and just to show off that you were here, that you did not miss a certain season, and that you have the cool cosmetic. By the way, did I mention you have to pay for these things? So some games offer systems where once you buy the first one, you get enough coins to then buy repeat ones, and you can essentially just bank the coins that you get from the first battle pass and continuously rebuy them. But sometimes that is not always fair, and when I say that, I don't mean to attack anybody, because whenever I hear that argument, it's mainly like YouTubers or people who can manage their money, their coins well. And I think it also creates a different issue, because when you have extra coins in the bank, it is far more likely for a user to spend it. A child, or let's say somebody with the mind of a child, playing Fortnite probably doesn't understand that fully, or using his coins is attached to these shiny things in the shop. Meaning, a child playing Fortnite may not understand fully that when he uses his coins, that is removing the benefit to get something later. You are effectively giving up the future for something now, which is okay, because a lot of adults can rationalize, hey, wait a second, I really like this costume in the shop, I'm going to spend coins on that. But sometimes when you are targeting children and then you use children's devices against them, it's a little concerning. What if we are dealing with no coins? What if we are dealing with real money? What if you look across the business world and decide to put your money in video games? That may be a tempting offer, but if we look at the wide range of the market, you realize how out of control that money is. No matter how fucked up the stock market gets, at least I know when Monica Lewinsky is inside trading, when my money goes down, at least her money goes down just a little bit. I mean, that's what happens in theory, at least. That doesn't actually happen. Here, a higher power in this case is called Valve, because Valve controls the entire market. And I am talking about Counter-Strike, if you don't know. Very recently, there has been a crash. Have made it so when you have 5 red items, and I'm not going to go into that. If you know, you know. If you don't worry about it. If you have 5 red items, you can trade up into a golden knife, and those golden knives are actually the whole in-game economy of Counter-Strike. So now we are seeing something very interesting, where the prices went up for a very small amount, then they dipped out of fear, and then steadily they've grown because over time people have grown more interested in buying knives, and this feels like the correct time to. And so we have seen a lot of interesting things happen. People's prices have risen because a lot of people have red items and the prices of reds go up. And we've seen a lot of people prices go down because now their knives are flooded all over the place. What's good? What's bad? I don't know. What I do know, what I do think, is Valve was very intentional when they did this. Because from my point of view, they are not trying to eliminate the skin market. They are not trying to cause a crash. They are trying to centralize it. Now, every time you go onto CS Float or CS Skins, there is a risk of the buyer and or the seller reverting that trade. And I think that was the ultimate goal. In my humble opinion, Steam wanted the full piece of the pie. They wanted to centralize the market in a way where they benefited each time a sell happened. So how do you do that? You make sure it all happens on your platform. You cut out all the other people, and then you reap in the profits. I'm standing up properly. If I look different here or if the scene is different, my bad. But I do kind of want to play defense for $1 billion company. The market was getting out of control. Have you ever created something that has gone off the rails and gotten out of your control? You think you are doing it for evil reasons, but you're only like 40% evil. Then all of a sudden, forces outside your control turn that 40% evil into 80% evil. Next up, the law in your home country is changing what is allowed, and you can influence the law here because of your bricked up status, but ultimately the law passes. Do you A, let the wild dogs run wild, or B, enforce the control you have, and you have a lot of control and a lot of power because this is your game and your entity and not a gambling website's game? I relate and can sympathize with a lot of people who lost a lot of money, but those people who lost a lot of money also, if they held on for a little bit more, they probably saw a return. My knives went up, and I have really shitty knives. So, question mark, question mark, question mark. I guess to put a cap on it, I don't like what they did. They certainly know what they are doing, because anytime you did, let's say, go out and buy an item on CS Float, that little bit of extra 30% that goes to Steam could have gone into your pocket. It could have gone into my pocket. Granted, most of the time, it did just go to funneling an offshore gambling site. Do we need more of those? Heavens no. But when you're doing it all through Steam, you're definitely losing or spending more money, and Valve is taking a cut of that, which is why I think they centralized the market. So once again, I really feel for anybody who took drastic measures once they realized the market was in jeopardy, and then they did not stick around to see it come back up. This is not what should happen in an economy. There should be forewarning. There should be care around people's wealth. But here's the thing, when you create a monster, it can be impossible to stop. And that's why a lot of the times financial advisors exist. And I don't think the people on YouTube telling you what knives to buy are financial advisors. Use your money at your own risk and don't put it in video game stocks, please. You know what else feels impossible to stop? Day One DLC. Day One DLC is a plague on this earth. Why does this even exist? Well, I'm sorry. It's for the reasons I said at the top, because video games are for money and not always for fun. They are not always for consumers. But day one DLC feels like something that is a conspiracy. This feels like something we should all just agree to never buy and it'll just go away. And it feels like companies paying YouTubers to buy the day one DLC to make sure it's promoted properly. I have zero evidence for this. I am sure I have bought day one DLC or worried about a custom in-game item and gone out of my way, even if I do not remember it, to pre-order or buy a deluxe pack. And I can still want it to stop. That does not cancel out the other. It is okay to not have sunk cost fallacy. It is okay to just say, hey, you know what? I did this thing. Now I don't want it to be that way again. That is okay. I will not let FOMO decide if I want to buy this thing that will be included in the Game of the Year edition 3 months down the line on a sale and have 5 remasters in the next couple years when I can probably just emulate the game that I want to play in the first place. So let's talk about the thing I'm sure you came to hear. Fallout 4 is a greedy piece of crap. If you don't know, Fallout 4 Anniversary Edition recently came out, and this follows along the lines of Plants vs. Zombies Replanted and a whole bunch of other crap, where essentially they are taking the property that you loved, that you have a lot of cherishment with, well, maybe not with Fallout 4, but I still think that's a fun enough game where you can replay it. You don't need to defend liking Fallout 4 for me. I will grant you that permission. I am the authority here after all. But my point is that in Fallout 4, like with a lot of games that are releasing nowadays, they don't want you to go back and play the original games that are jam-packed with content and fun, because then you can't keep giving them money. And if the statistics are true, that games are not being bought at the volume they are being released, and I think that's okay because people are struggling with money, then companies look at that and they go, oh my god, we have to find a way to continually charge the consumer. We still have X amount of people playing Fallout 4. Let's re-release it and charge them and make the game worse. Genius, Wilson. You're hired. Why this is concerning is because it reminds us, the consumers, that we don't have power here. That even though a lot of our memories and a lot of the cherished moments are tied to these games, at any single point, a company can pull and rip it and then re-put out something and charge you again for it. Is this fair? No. Should you lose all of your hard work and progress anytime a company sits back and the CEO goes, you know what, my line hasn't gone up enough? Fuck no. So what I think should happen, if it means anything at all, is I am okay with some video game remasters and some replanted editions, but there always needs to be a legacy version of the game. And I understand that defeats the point for the company, because then how can I charge them more? Well, that's the ultimate thing, is consumers don't want the products that they play delisted. Shocking. I am sure that is horrible to hear for $1 billion company. And what scares consumers is the fact that they don't give a shit about that. They want profits at the end of it all. Nothing else matters. And that leads me to GTA, because we are reaching a very cataclysmic climax point of anything that may bring GTA 6 a little bit of bad press is being overshadowed like this big global conspiracy, because I am 95% sure that there is not a big conspiracy around what I'm about to say, but it's far too coincidental to ignore. The GTA 6 delay came at the same time of a certain union announcing, and one might say, would call this union busting, but that's a little bit of an allegation, so I'm going to take a step back and not lobby too much more that I cannot prove in court, especially against a billion-dollar company when a 14-year-old has already gone to jail and owes $300 million for leaking the game, and somehow the media, the marketing, the hype around this still promises this to be the next revolutionary thing. It's been delayed 3 times, but yet the normie on Twitter is still hyper excited for this because girl and fat ass. And like, I want to talk about like woke for a second here, because before I put myself in a mob of, oh my god, this, and this, and this, and this, I love video games now because they are a great litmus test in terms of who is 12 years old and who is absolutely fucking brain degenerate. Because woman, kind of pretty, bleh. Woman with distinct feature, bleh. Woman with boob and big butt, bee. And that to me is absolutely asinine and also ironically very childlike because wham, I can only play video games that have girls with big boobs and big butts. And I see that a lot with GTA 6, where if this was another company, if this was another product, people would be saying, go woke, go broke. And here we are, because you can smell her farts, it's instantly the 10 out of 10 game of the year. And it's been delayed 3 times, and everything we hear about it is trash. Why is this important? How does this affect you? How does this affect me? It affects you because the product that you want, the product that you have been promised, the product that you are envisioning in your mind does not exist. It is a hype machine meant to drain and draw your money before a product even releases. And then when that product does releases, it doesn't matter because they already have your money. Will it be good? Who gives a shit? That is a second factor to the fact that they have put the wool over your eyes and union busted and delayed and done shitty corporate practice after shitty corporate practice, and it still is the most anticipated game of all time. This to me is the corporate blind side because GTA 5 released a fucking decade ago and GTA Online has been squeezed and squeezed and squeezed, and yet people still line up hook, line, and sinker for it. The only other topic I have to talk about is a small game named Sunhaven. Now, I actually went to buy this game when it was on sale for like 90% off, and this is a little bit more anecdotal, but I hope somebody can relate to this because you're like, oh my god, here's this interesting, fun farming sim for 90% off. It's very colorful, it's very vibrant, it's very bright. Let's spend my Sunday afternoon playing this. Then you open the store page, and there's 50 packs of DLC, and you have a heart attack because you're like, this game does not need 50 packs of DLC. I want the different costumes that the DLC has in the game. That should be included in the game as customization options. That's what I liked about the Wii version of Star Wars The Force Unleashed, is all the different character stuff. When I was a wee little lad on the PSP Vita, and I would be in Nebraska Furniture Mart, and my mom would be talking to the person trying to get an item on sale, I would be trying to customize my clone troopers in the Battlefront games. Sometimes I barely even played the fucking Battlefront games because the controls were so bad, but I had a great time designing my characters. And then I would get home to the PS2 version and actually play the game and pretend those custom characters were there. Now, that is what I try to do modern day because it is no longer a world where technology holds us back. In theory, I should have a manageable portfolio of costumes of my PS2 and my PlayStation Vita in this current technology world. But it's not about that. It's about buying them and rebuying them on different platforms because that gets the company more money. And then we find ourselves in this really vicious cycle where you go play Fallout 4 and I go play Stardew Valley for the 100th time because guess what? It doesn't cost me money and it brings that comforting feeling. But companies get upset and they go, wait a second, but we just spent $100 million on this property. What do we need to do? How come we can't get any money? So then they raise the prices because they need to get profit. And then we get more afraid and we back up more because that's a higher price tag and we were avoiding that in the first place. So then we go back and we play the games that are comforting that we already own. And then once again, that cycle repeats where they raise the price because they're not getting the profits, but we buy less games because there's no reason to, because there's no incentive, because we know they are not trying to deliver fun player experiences. They are trying to squeeze us for all we are worth. To put a final wrap on it, this was a very passionate video about it, but I also watch Skill Up's weekly or monthly news segment, and I have my own complaints about that. You see me start my monthly video games, and that's partly in a response to people like Skill Up, because they fill their content with so much depressing stuff and so much corporate speak that I cannot tie the two different. Because here's the thing, when you, even if you are not saying, even if you are not condoning, I don't like this behavior, but I'm going to talk about it endlessly on repeat, you condition the audience to think that is normal and acceptable. In my personal humble opinion, talking about like the cutting of employees and all the desperate stuff, all the depressing stuff, really makes the player and the audience go, I don't want to be a part of this. So let me ask you this, hypothetical Skillip who's watching this. Would you want to watch your own videos when you fill it with a whole bunch of depressing stuff that feels like corporate espionage to try to make the consumers okay with all of this stuff? Even when you are using your own corporate lingo to try to disguise and tell us how bad it is and tell us how to feel? Fuck that. No. We want to hear about video games. I don't care about the money. That is why I play video games, to try to distract myself from the horrors and fear that I feel in the real world. That is all I got for you. I gotta go or my camera's gonna run out of battery. So goodbye, see ya, quick outro. If I cut back to my smaller, crappier webcam, you'll see me there. If not, see you in the next one. Goodbye.